Hey everyone, this is a call. And what I want to talk about in this particular video is this is something I've received a lot of questions about, and I don't, let me try not to be too negative. I've received questions about this, but I think men use this question or this understanding as a rationalization to continue ejaculating all the time, which is prostate inflammation or prostate cancer, right? So ejaculation, there was a study, and I believe it was done at Harvard, in which they so-called discovered that men who ejaculate more frequently have less prostate inflammation or prostate cancer. So is this true? Well, you have to look at the demographics that they actually used for the study. If I recall correctly, the demographics that they used for this particular study were, well, there's two different groups. It was men who were ejaculating two or three times a week, right? Which is kind of average guy, maybe. Then they compared it to the group of men who were not at all. So in other words, these men were just not, probably not interested in sex, right? So the sort of more, I don't want to use the term asexual, but they're just simply not that interested in sex. So you can make the argument maybe they had lower testosterone levels, etc. So, but there fundamentally might be a hormonal difference. So if men who are not interested in ejaculation, is that really the right demographic you want to compare to men releasing all the time relative to prostate inflammation? And I would argue from a mundane perspective, meaning from an everyday perspective, yes, that's probably a decent demographic to compare to, is guys who are not releasing versus guys who are releasing. However, I think a better study would have been men who are abstaining from ejaculation by choice, meaning there's no hormonal issues, right? There's no hormonal imbalances. These are normally functioning men with normal hormonal levels, compared to other men who also have normal function, normal sexual functioning, and also normal hormonal levels. Compare those two groups. Oh, I should also mention, the men abstaining from ejaculation by choice are also practicing transmutation, meaning the shifting of energy upward out of the lower centers. Now, why is that important? The reason is what they're talking about, generally speaking, relative to this study, was this inflammatory response of the body around the prostate. And yes, if you release the energy, the fluids out of the prostate, yes, it'll reduce the inflammation. Makes total sense, because what is inflammation? An inflammation or an itis, right? So prostatitis, I think that's the word. Anyway, if I didn't get that correct, oh well, sorry. But inflamed prostate, this itis, what it basically implies is energy is congested, right? Energy is simply not moving. It is congested in that part of the body. So to compare a group of men who are ejaculating frequently to another group of men who are never ejaculating or very rarely ejaculating, who also have zero interest in sex, who also may be all completely, totally engaged up here all the time, that means the energy is always settled down around their pelvic floor, prostate, and the sex center. This energy is simply congesting. You have to look at sexual energy as a bit like water. Water flows downhill until it gets to its lowest point. When the water gets to its lowest point, then what ends up happening is that it settles, right? So how do we move the water back up? Or rather, how do we transform the water into a different phase, right? So you've got liquid, gas, and solid states of water. So if the energy is all just liquid and it's condensed down at the pelvic floor, then you basically apply heat to it. And the heat in this particular case is your awareness. It is sexual excitation, right? So you become excited and it heats up this water, which causes steam, okay? So this is one of the reasons why discharging is helpful. Sexual excitement shifts the energy, and then the guy discharges out of his body. Those of us who are interested in retaining the energy, this is not an attractive choice. Certainly not just to reduce prostate inflammation. So the other option here is to utilize a transmutation practice. I'll give you a really simple one, is you simply put your awareness around the prostate, around the genitalia, right? So you create a very slight contraction there, and you inhale up inside your belly. Exhale the awareness in the belly. Now, when I say belly, I'm meaning 2 fingers approximately below the navel, inside the stomach, directly above the perineum. And for those of you who don't know what the perineum is, it's the space between the genitals and the anus. So it's the taint, the geech, the chode, a lot of different terms for that particular area of the body. The anal genital space, I think, is another one I heard. So the point here is that you're wanting to shift the energy upward. So the navel point, the hara, lower dantian, different names for that area as well, that would be a good option to shift the energy there because it's a natural storage center, right? So this is your powerhouse, right? The belly is your powerhouse. And that is where the energy for life, your drive for life, comes from. So it's actually very practical if you're interested in reducing inflammation on the prostate, if you're interested in abstaining from ejaculation, then what you want to do is simple things. And there's a lot of transmutation practices. I mean, there's literally thousands of transmutation practices available. They don't always call them that, right? But in essence, if you're doing a yoga practice, particularly the bandhas or the locks, what ends up happening is that they can often function like transmutation practices. Any sort of contraction along the pelvic floor in the movement of your awareness to a different area inside the body. So, for instance, if I want to send the energy up inside my head, not my preference, but if I wanted to send the energy up inside my head instead of in my navel area, then what I could do is same thing, create a contraction around the genitals, the perineum, anus. So in other words, you're kind of contracting what they call mula bandha or root lock. And then you take a deep breath, tongue at the roof of the mouth, roll the eyes up. And then I can shift up inside the head, right? Energy flows to where the attention goes here, right? So itis, inflammation, is congested energy. Congested energy equals heat, which, like I said, leads to that inflammation. If you do a transmutation practice frequently enough, what you do is you shift the heat out of that center and you move it to a better place, which would be having fire in the belly, right? So hopefully all that kind of makes sense. I wanted to talk about the subject. I get this question at least twice a month, and I give them it's always the same explanation. And so I realized I never did a video on this, so hopefully all that makes sense. I know it's a little bit cryptic and it's a little unscientific in how I approached it, but you'll never find a study that's comparing regular dudes to dudes doing transmutation practices. You know, want to know why? Because there's no money in it. So anyway, trial and error, practice, experiment on yourself. If you have inflamed prostate, try doing other things instead of just ejaculating. So with all that said, thank you much.